right. I'm here with Joel Harrison. Joel Harrison is a guitarist, educator, composer, improviser, author now, and he has a lot of new stuff coming out, or that has recently come out. A few albums, as well as this book, Guitar Talk: Conversations with Visionary Players. And I'm really excited to go through a bunch of shop talk about guitar. But the question I always start off with is just an icebreaker of, do you drink coffee? If so, can you tell me about your coffee drinking habits or your tea drinking habits? Do you have a beverage that you feel any affinity towards?
Oh, well, I do find it's important to my creative process in the morning, but I'm not too particular. I just do a pour over with dark beans.
Straight up, straightforward, no milk or sugar or anything?
Sometimes a little maple syrup.
Ooh, okay. That's a new one.
Yeah.
Well, that was quick and easy. I guess like in interviewing all these guitarists for this book, just to follow up with the coffee thing, have you run into anybody who's like a total coffee freak or whose playing truly depends on coffee?
Apparently, David Torn is a complete coffee fanatic.
Wow.
He's not actually, unfortunately, in the book, one of many people that I just couldn't fit in there. But I don't, I didn't ask questions like that, so I just don't know. But I'm sure
Mhm.
you'll find a couple. You know, there are a lot of us out there.
Well, that's interesting to know David Torn. I wouldn't have expected that. He's like a somewhat meditative player, but that's good to know. Well, cool. Let's dive into some of the stuff about your book. So, I guess first of all, just you've interviewed a ton of guitarists, and as somebody who's relatively new to this like interviewing people thing, like I think this will be episode 26, and you know you have, uh, I'm sure, a lot more than that of interviews with guitarists. So, how do you think about interviewing, and is there any sort of advice that you would lay on a newbie who's interviewing people?
Oh, well, I'm no expert, but my goal with the book was to try to talk about substantive issues both within and without music. And I didn't get at all into the particulars of guitar playing, um, gear, or anything like that. It was more about process and life goals and background, obstacles, philosophy, that type of thing. So I just try to have the most interesting conversation I can have with somebody. I ask, I just think to myself, well, what do I most want to know about this person? And maybe that's about their music, and maybe it's other stuff too. That's how it works for me.
Do you go in with like an agenda, or do you go in just sort of feeling it out?
Uh, I always think about it and write down a few key issues for myself, but it pretty quickly veers just towards a conversation because I have so much in common with all these people. We just start talking. But I definitely have particular points that I want to cover depending on who the person is. And it requires a little bit of thought. And then it just kind of seems to flow.
Beautiful. Yeah. I interviewed our mutual friend David Rothenberg in the previous episode, and I found that I had to like draw out everything that I was going to do in terms of our conversation because I just wanted to hit all these points. But I feel like with you being guitarists, we're going to sort of have it direct itself a lot more. So, um, yeah, I guess. In terms of these guitarists that you interviewed, did you know, like, were you familiar with everybody's playing, or did you, was anybody unfamiliar to you?
No, I was familiar with everybody's playing, some more than others, but I guess there's not many people I'm not familiar with in this, kind of very open area that I involve myself in. And, you know, the, for the book, there's so many people that could have been in it that I pretty much had to at least start with a circle of players that were in my periphery. Because even then, I had to leave out friends and really great musicians. So I had to start with people who I knew something about, and and who I really cared about.
Mhm. Did you interview anybody and you just didn't have room for them, or I mean, I assume you've interviewed people beyond the 27 in the book.
No, I haven't. No, I just I don't have anything in the can. Maybe there's a book two someday.
Awesome, yeah. Um, I guess so. You say on your website that you're a guitarist, composer, educator, and I've always heard of this like triad of guitarist, composer, improviser, and I guess the improviser is kind of obvious in your case. Do you see any prioritization in terms of those roles for yourself?
No, I just different months. Sort of, I might be emphasizing one more than the other. I probably spend a little more time composing than I do playing the guitar. I enjoy it a little more. Um, but I guess they all kind of play off each other.
Mhm.
And with the Guitar Summit, the education thing has become a little more prominent.
And so this summit that you're referring to is the Alt Guitar Summit for anybody
Yes.
that doesn't know. And so I was thinking about this, and I feel like when I was like coming up as a guitarist, it was all like the talk was always about modern guitar, modern jazz guitar, and the choice of alt as a word is interesting. And I'm curious what that means to you because it seems like you have a discerning collection of guitarists that you affiliate with. And so,
Yeah.
what does alt mean?
Well, not much is the honest answer, and that's sort of on purpose. Um, I'm looking for people who kind of create their own path and have kind of a vision of something a little different. Um, and the alternative is sort of one of those vague words like eclectic, doesn't really mean that much, but you know, it's one of the things that I just chose the name, and then I was sort of stuck with it. It was too late to change. But pretty much most of the people that I work with are very unique thinkers. They're an alternative to convention, I suppose you could say.
Mhm. It seems also like a lot of these people are like fairly modern, innovative players, but a lot of them are like I mean you have Ralph Towner in there, and so like you have these legends of different varieties. But does alt have is it agnostic in terms of like modern versus tradition or innovation versus tradition that type of thing?
No, I just think they all share a questing spirit, and there's really not that many so-called legends in the book. There's only you know, three or four. A lot of them are more under the radar players.
Mhm. All sub legends, no. Um, I mean, by my standards, most of them feel legendary. So
Yeah, well, maybe five or six.
Um, well, so I saw also that you studied with Mick Goodrick, among others. And so something I love about Mick and his work is just how exhaustive it is. And you interviewed Wayne Krantz as well, and Ben Monder, and all these dudes have like this very exhaustive quality to what they do. Like when I was in college, I sent Ben Monder an email saying like, "Hey, can I take lessons with you?" And he was basically like, "Here's this one sheet of stuff to practice," and that one sheet was worth more than college, I feel like. And so I'm
Yeah.
wondering what you can say about this exhaustiveness and any sort of Mick Goodrick stories you want to share.
Oh, well, it's actually kind of beyond comprehension. His books, it just what a unique mind, and that type of attention to completeness. is completely foreign to me. It's just not my way of doing things, and it's amazing. Um, I interviewed him once for an article, and I learned a little bit more about that. And it's just the way his mind works. But you know, these guys are kind of obsessives,
Mhm.
and it's what makes them so good. And um, I just think that they're perfectly comfortable spending hour after hour in a dimly lit room, sort of like monks in a cell, just creating this calligraphy that will hopefully last for 1,000 years. It would drive me nuts, but I'm just not made that way. It's so impressive. Mick Goodrick's stories. Well, I studied with him a long, long time ago, and that was a different time in his life. But uh, he would say really wild stuff, back then, like, when you're soloing, sense the tear ducts in your eyes. Or he'd say something like, try to destroy your solo in the middle of it.
Hmm. Interesting.
Stuff to kind of break you, I suppose, to break you out of your habitual thinking.
Yeah, just stir things up. Hmm.
Yeah.
Interesting. Would you
But
say?
he always had that mastery of chord work,
Mhm.
even way back when, and it really got me started on that, and I've always been fascinated with it ever since.
Um, I mean, you went interviewed Wayne Krantz and others, and Wayne has like his improviser's OS, and that to me seems like a.
I know I saw that. It's mind blowing to me. I looked at it and I just got faint and put it back down.
So how would you contrast your approach to things, to like somebody like Wayne or Ben or Mick?
You mean teaching? In
Uh,
terms of teaching stuff?
Teaching or shedding or just in general.
Oh, well, number one, those guys practice way more than me,
Uh-huh.
and it shows in their playing. So we could start there.
Mhm.
Um, Number two, uh, my mind tends to jump all over the place, and I'm always going from project to project and sort of thinking as an arranger and a composer and stuff. And those guys are true guitar players. They write for the guitar, they play the guitar, they lead bands with the guitar. It's all about that. And I'm often on my own records, not even featured.
Mhm.
So that's one difference.
Yeah, it seems like at least I mean, when you think of the guitar and like the sort of mainstream sense of some guy playing open chords and uh, whatever. What am I getting at? There's, I guess, an ego problem with guitar that I'm glad that you don't seem to have, and I try to avoid as well. But I mean, do you feel like there's an ego problem?
I might have at one point, but honestly, every last person in this book is beyond all that.
Mhm. Right.
They really are, which is so refreshing. I don't think there's a single person in the book who's got that competitive edge that makes you just sort of not want to be around them, which we've all experienced. But no, I would say in large part, for instance, Julian Lage wrote the introduction, and he comments on the sort of conviviality of the guitar community, and I really feel that,
Mhm.
at least in the circles I run in.
Mhm. With somebody like Pat Metheny in there, can you speak to like what motivates the greatness in these people? Then, if there's no you know ego motivation or that kind of like more toxic.
Oh, well, come on, let's be fair. There's ego motivation for all of us. I
Right,
mean,
right.
I don't know if you can get as good as these people get without
Well,
wanting
yeah.
to be the ruler of your own kingdom
Mhm.
to some degree. But there is a common trait that I noticed amongst some of the more advanced players, and that is this monomaniacal focus that every moment should be spent in pursuit of this goal, and nothing else is really as important. And so even when you're talking to some of these folks, you feel like they're being very nice to you, but they can't wait to go home and practice.
Interesting. Do you think that they can't wait to go home and practice more so than they can't wait to go out and perform?
Or one or the other.
Um, Interesting. Well, I guess of everybody that you interviewed, whose woodshedding sort of protocols were you most impressed by or most surprised
Oh, I didn't talk about that. You know, everybody practices really hard. That much I know. I didn't want to depress myself by learning how much more they practice than me.
by? Right. I guess like I'm a big Maunder head myself, and there are all these like legendary stories I was hearing back in the day, and like he was telling me about like this whole like trying to practice for 24 hours straight thing, and so I'm looking for examples of like
I don't know if that's true. I never asked him, but you know, he's very monastic.
Mhm.
It you know, they only made one Ben Monder,
right.
and when you see what he does, it kind of makes sense that yeah, you would have to work on that, just that one piece for about 400 hours to be able to do it.
Right.
And by the way, you're the only living person who's going to ever be able to play that piece until some next generation comes along and decodes that.
Totally. Yeah.
There's nothing that I play that somebody else can't play.
Mhm.
I don't have that kind of technique. Very few people do.
Right.
It's just shocking what he brings to the table.
Mhm. Yeah, I guess like the willingness to explore these stretchy chords, like I just feel like there's such a unwillingness among other guitarists to even touch those. Like I remember back in the day,
Well,
people would be like,
you've
"That
got
won't
to
hurt
be careful not to injure yourself.
you," right?
And his hands are huge.
Mhm.
So I wouldn't dream of playing some of those chords because I would injure myself. And, you know, so you got to be careful and realize that that guy's hands are monstrously
Right.
long.
Hmm. Sure. um, well, so you mentioned that you didn't want to talk about gear stuff in the book, and I myself I've always been like a gear minimalist, I guess. Like I prefer to just play guitar, play music, that type of thing. But guitar, also more than other instruments, I think seems to have a gear fetishization problem. Do you identify as like a gear minimalist, or where do you put yourself on that spectrum of minimal?
Well, no, I would say that it's just in the past number of years that many guitar players have started to create whole different sound worlds with different effects that are being made. And so there's so many of them now, and there's a really unique stuff going on. It's pretty fascinating.
Mhm.
Um, and I've sort of gone in and out of that. Some of my records have more of that than others, but I find it kind of you know, I get a little. I don't like to bring too much stuff with me. Stuff's always breaking. Or, I don't like hauling huge pedal boards and then forgetting how things work. So you know, I'm a little bit more minimal. But there's been times when I've showed up to gigs with 12 pedals and stuff. So I'm all for it if people really take the time to use them in a musical way. It can be fantastic.
Mhm. Um, uh, in terms of the different guitars that you talk to, I feel like you can cluster some of them up with others. Like I feel like obviously like Pat Metheny is like central to a lot of the other guitarists there. But how would you, if you were to cluster any to like have a few schools of thought, like maybe like three or four? How, I don't know if this is a ridiculous question to you, but like how would you maybe like break them up into groups?
Hmm. Well, there are people who are schooled in the bebop tradition. Metheny, Mike Stern, Cheryl Bailey. You could throw any jazz tune in front of them and they'll play the bejesus out of it. There's other folks who are much more kind of noise, experimental, kind of creating sound worlds.
Mhm.
Rafik Bhatia, Anthony Pirog, who does a lot of stuff, but he definitely does that.
Henry Kaiser.
Oh, yeah, definitely Henry Kaiser. Um, and then there's guys who are a little bit more kind of from this rock perspective. Nels Klein,
Mhm.
Vernon Reed. But, really amazing improvisers in any setting you put them in.
Mhm.
And I suppose, Fred Frith. What am I talking about? I should have put him in with the people who are, creating sonic worlds.
Mhm.
Yeah, so all different flavors, but so many of the folks that I value can kind of do a lot of different things,
Mhm.
and have a curiosity to try different things. And all of them are sort of people who inhabit various worlds, whether it's composing or sound collage making, as well as improvising. And that's kind of what's so neat about the guitar. It's really can involve so many different worlds,
Mhm. Yeah, and
including just playing blues and you know
totally. Yeah, I
some.
guess cool.
Okay, good.
All right, we're back after some disconnect.
Where were we?
Let's see here. We were talking about different, I guess, like schools of thought, rock guitarists, like the influence of blues, rock, um, different stuff like that. I was gonna ask, sort of like, where does the classical and the nylon string and stuff come in here? Uh, where's an interesting intersection with that world? Would you say?
I didn't really get involved much in that with this book, although I love that stuff.
Hmm.
There's almost no nylon string players except Ralph Towner. I mean, people, I'm sure, dabble in it,
Hmm.
including Pat Metheny, who uses it, to great success on certain of his pieces. But there's mostly just electric guitar players in this. So, I just another book or something needs to be written about that.
I'm curious if you're familiar with the guitarist Dusan Bogdanovich.
I have heard that name, but I don't think I'm familiar with
Um, he's this Serbian guitarist, and he did a record back in the day with like Charlie Hayden, and it's really great stuff. But I mean, he's much more known as like a classical composer, guitarist guy. Um, but really interesting dude to check out. And the other person,
Oh, yeah, 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 yeah.
he's amazing. The other guy is Egberto Gismonti. Uh, these are just my two like people that I gotta.
Oh, man, that guy's incredible.
Yeah. Well,
Incredible.
so
Oh, I'm sorry. By the way, Wolfgang Mutzbiel is a virtuoso classical guitarist. So I take that back. He's in the book,
good
and
call.
he's an
Yeah.
extraordinary nylon string player. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love Egberto Gismonti. Is he still alive?
I believe so. Yeah. Um, yeah. I
Because
think.
I haven't heard his name in a while. That's a horrible thing to ask about somebody, but
Mhm. No, no.
but yeah, he I used to really love listening to him for sure.
Yeah. Um, well, so in terms of uh, guitarists that are no longer here, that makes me think of a few people. Among them is Alan Holdsworth, and I'm a huge Alan fan. And I feel like Alan is like sort of
Oh
almost like
man.
a self-hating guitarist. Like he, always wanted to play a horn. And I'm curious if you have any thoughts on this, like people who almost wish that they weren't guitarists, who just have other interests like being a horn player or a drummer or whatever.
Yeah, no, I don't have too many thoughts on that. I think Alan Holdsworth had a legendary sort of, self-defeating attitude, even though he played better than everybody. So
Right.
that's hard to explain. It seems like kind of a burden to carry around, though.
Hmm. Yeah. Um, and I mean, I also saw that you studied with Jimmy Wyble. I got the pleasure of seeing him towards the end of his life doing a clinic at USC. Do you have any stories or lessons that you took away from your time studying with him?
Well, he was a beautiful man, just a really kind soul, and I didn't spend that much time with him, but that whole thing about contrapuntal guitars,
Hmm.
very few people have explored, and I think it's really incredible. And I'm, I'm a little bit trying to work on that stuff and get back into it, but he had a pretty unique um, focus on that, which
Hmm.
is really cool.
Yeah, I agree.
And also, he played with Bob Wills, which is I didn't even realize when I studied with him.
Are you a big Bob Wills fan?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, love that stuff.
My dad is a big fan of him, and all the roly poly and the little noises that he
Yeah,
makes
I
in the
love that.
background and stuff.
Yeah.
Cool, man. Well, so a lot of these dudes that you interviewed are big innovators. I'm curious where you see innovation in guitar currently, and if you think that there are any like low hanging fruit for places to innovate, or just interesting areas for the modern guitarist to explore.
Oof. Well, there's definitely a lot of people making sounds on the guitar that were kind of inconceivable 10 years ago with
Hmm.
electronic manipulation. It's kind of interesting. I also think there's a way in which there's a growing amount of people who are incorporating cultures from around the world into their improvising.
Hmm.
Um,
Anybody that comes to mind?
Man, why am I spacing out on this South African nylon string player? He's
This
playing all that African music.
Lionel Lewicke?
I'm spacing, but Nguyen Lee is kind of on the forefront of that
Mm.
also. But one of the things that's kind of freaky is everybody's so technically good now.
Hmm.
It's just these people go to school and they're being trained really well and they're working hard, and it's just God, amazing.
Hmm. Um, so I feel like when I look around on YouTube at guitar related stuff, a lot of the time I see this thing that I guess I'll call like the phenomenon of the guitarist alone in a room with some MIDIs, and like it seems like
Yeah.
they're really comfortable with their MIDI band. And as somebody who likes to write complicated music, I've definitely like experienced not having people who want to play with you because you write complicated shit. But I don't know where like so many of these guitarists are fascinated with just like shredding, in the craziest way. Where do you think guitar technique is headed? Because I feel like that's not that interesting. Who can play the fastest? But we've got to top out on technique eventually, right?
It's just shocking to me. I can't even imagine playing at a quarter the speed of some of these guys do.
Hmm.
It's especially the metal guys. I just don't. I I so don't. I'm not a fast player, and it's
Hmm.
just mind-boggling to me. I mean, it's, well, yeah. I mean, you can only play so many notes per second, so
Right,
um, I don't know what to say about that other than those typically aren't the type of people I listen to,
right. Same here.
but I kind of appreciate it in a weird way.
Like in an athletic
Uh,
way.
It's pretty amazing. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I don't watch sports a lot, but when I do, I'm amazed at their
Yeah.
ability, that type of thing.
Um, I mean, yeah, if we can't get any faster than that, and if we can't get any stretchier than Ben Monder, and we can't, play more than 6 notes, I don't know, like, where do you think people will be innovating technique wise in the next, however long?
God, I just don't know.
I mean, the effects realm seems like it's a
Um,
little bit more ripe for development, and that's like a nice modern extension of just like classic
yeah,
technique. But
and people playing 7 and 8 and 10 string guitars,
mhm,
that's going to be happening more. I think people incorporating Indian music is going to happen more.
mhm,
Um, I think that I don't know. I hope people just play with more soul than I ever did, though.
mm,
That's my goal. How about that?
that's
How
fair.
about that for innovation?
Yeah,
Move me.
innovating on soul involved. How do you innovate on
Innovate my
soul?
heart, because I don't really care too much about that. It's of interest to me, but
Hmm.
in the end, music has got to be about touching our hearts and souls, or else it's just a math problem.
Hmm. I mean, nothing wrong with a math problem though. Um,
Well, yeah, that's just not what I'm personally attracted to. There's nothing wrong with any of it,
mhm,
but I that's why I listen to music. I don't listen for technique
mhm.
or anything like that.
Um, let's see here. I guess so. In looking at your website, I'm seeing basically that you very much have your shit together. And you have this alt guitar summit. You have albums and a book coming out, and I'm curious. Just you know, what sort of like practical tips would you offer a career guitarist or a career musician?
Hmm.
And when did those occur to you? Like when did you come to them?
Well, to answer the last question, too late in life. And second, if you look to me for career advice, you're in trouble, because I've made a lot of the wrong choices in terms of career by trying to do a whole lot of different things and never being categorized, and
Mhm,
not learning how to read well enough, and not getting a master's degree.
mhm,
All these things that really I should have paid attention to a little more, because they lead to more steady employment, if nothing else.
yeah.
Um, but I do think also that the prime component in all this is curiosity.
Mm,
And if you're genuinely curious about learning and growing and exploring, and when you don't have that, you're playing, it goes dead in the water.
mhm,
And you'll see that with sidemen who just play in other people's bands or just do bar music. They're not interested in growing or learning. They just
mhm,
kind of hack out the same stuff all the time. And uh you know nothing wrong with that, but in terms of the way I've led my life, I've always tried to make music an act of discovery.
mhm,
And by doing that, it led me to making the book and the camp. And you know um I just learned so much from the people in the book and in the camp. And that's what it's all about for me, just keeping myself fascinated by the whole process.
mhm. Um, in this camp and just in getting to know all these different guitarists, I'm curious if you've had any sort of mundane insights. Like, there's this whole thing on YouTube of just people, showing what they eat in a day, or like something where it's like very bland things of this is how I live. And are there any sort of like interesting things like what people choose to eat for lunch that you think is worth noting?
No, I
Yeah.
completely disdain all of that. It's just a waste of time. I unfriend people who put shots of their meals on Facebook.
Hmm.
I don't give a shit.
That's fair. Um, right, well, I mean, so there you don't find any interesting insight in any of the mundanity of any of the guitar players you've talked with, like any sort of like.
I do, but if I oh yeah, absolutely. But I'd like to conduct that in person. I don't need to know. I don't need to
Oh yeah, yeah,
go online to learn about them.
yeah. I mean, I'm not suggesting that
Of
you have
course,
to.
they're
Or,
all
yeah.
yeah, they're just all quirky, wacky people. Of course, they're all a bit crazy. That's what's so delightful about it.
I see. So the insight is maybe just the value of weirdness, and
Yeah, all these people think outside of the box, and they're all so smart. You can get talking with them about anything. I love that. Not just about music.
what are some of the like most out there topics that you get into with these guitarists that are unmusic
Well,
related?
none of them are out there, but we talk about race and gender and politics and um, music business and struggles and you know roadblocks and breaking through and how to persevere, just stuff like that.
Mhm. Well, I gotta say, in the book, I gotta appreciate the diversity of the guests in there. Like, there's I feel like a very white portion of the guitar world, and it's great to
Yes.
people of color, women, all sorts of different individuals. Is there anything that you think is worth mentioning in that respect?
Well, I wish that the guitar world wasn't so much white males.
Mhm.
You could theorize on why that's true, but it is definitely very much that, and that may be changing. I don't know. Certainly, more women are playing the guitar now, which is great, but it just can't happen soon enough. It's such a boys' club.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, and by the way, I don't know if you mentioned it before, but I just want to know, make sure people do know the name of the book, Guitar Talk: Conversations with Visionary Players. Um, uh, and there's 27. Yeah, I think you mentioned that 27 interviews in all. Some are shorter, some are longer. But yeah, all the players are really interesting people.
And I really appreciate the way that you organize the book as well, because it provides the actual raw interview content, in like an interview format, as well as kind of some nicely formatted things and some commentary that I think gives it nice context. So anybody who wants to check it out, it's a very interesting book out on Terra Nova Press. And so I saw that you also did this uh, album of a similar name, Guitar Talk, and it's duets with different guitarists. Do you want to talk about
Yeah.
that at all?
Oh, yeah. Well, I just decided to, at one point, let me write some fairly simple music just to play with other guitarists. It's just so we can really improvise and have fun and not make it too technical.
Hmm.
And so I just called a few of my favorite players and asked them if they do that. We put this out. It's pretty intimate, stripped down, 2 guitars. One tune has 3 guitars, and I decided to start a little label, AGS, Alternative Guitar Summit Recordings, and it's just on Bandcamp, and it's very intimate, kind of modest affair.
Hmm.
Ben Monder, Steve Cardenas, Steve Swallow, um, David Gilmour, and Pete McCann are the guitarists who play with me, 2 tunes each.
Very cool. Um, that made me just think. Now I'm curious. You mentioned that you enjoy Scott LaFaro a lot, and I saw that you did a record of the music of Paul. I'm curious what your pronunciation is.
Motion, yeah, Paul
Motion.
Motion.
Okay, interesting. I hear so many different pronunciations, and I'm afraid to
Yeah, that's
select
the
one.
correct one. Yes, I arranged his, he's a drummer,
Mhm.
jazz drummer, but also a really interesting composer of kind of relatively simple elliptical tunes. And I arranged his music for a string quartet and 2 guitars.
Very cool.
I think, yeah, one of my more unusual projects for sure.
Yeah. I guess I always heard that he pronounced it one way, and then other people are saying it another way. So just curious.
Oh, well, that could be. Hey, I'm no authority.
I mean, I think you're probably right, because I heard that he said motion. But anyway, so let's see here. I guess I'm curious. You're an educator for guitar, and you have like this organizational skill to have created the summit. Do you have tips in terms of that world, in terms of like you know getting guitarists together to do worthwhile things and like share content and learn from each other? Like what started that part of your career?
Oh man, I don't know. I am pretty good at organizing things. Like taking a band on tour, I always say is like leading an army into war. You
Yeah.
have to be really tactically prepared. Um, and that's just some people's minds work like that. But I think it is useful to see what it's like on the other from the other side, or be the organizer rather than
Hmm.
participant. It gives you a lot more insight into what producers and club owners and stuff go through.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. In scoping out some of the details of it, I was very impressed by, just as a guitarist who has no capacity in that respect. I was like, whoa, this dude has his shit together. So that's why I had to ask about
it. It is. Sometimes I'm amazed that I pull certain stuff off. It's kind of crazy.
Mm-hmm.
But just get used to it, and some of it's just very practical.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'll just ask a few quick questions, then we can sign off. I forgot to mention this when we were talking about Alan Holdsworth, but in terms of like guitarists that are no longer with us, if you could bring any like a few back from the dead to be in the book, who would be enticing to you?
Oh God, man, there's so many. Jim Hall, Jimi Hendrix, Big Juris. Man, what about putting Robert Johnson in there?
Okay,
that's an innovator. Yeah, that's a good start.
yeah.
Cozy.
Let's see here. I guess I forgot what the other thing I was going to ask was, but yeah, I guess that's covered a lot of territory though. So the book is again Guitar Talk: Conversations with Visionary Players on Terra Nova, and then the other album is Guitar Talk, which is guitar duos, and then the last album that you recently put out is this Other River. Do you want to talk about that at all?
Oh, well, that one was about 4 years ago.
Oh shit! I saw. I thought it was coming out this year.
No, the most recent one is America at War. It's a big band record, 18 musicians. I'm really proud of that on the Sunnyside label.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's got a lot of composing and great playing on it.
It's funny. I thought that the Other River was a new one because I saw that on your Instagram, and it was as if it was today. So I was like, "Oh shit!" This is another record. But I'm glad to.
Yeah, I don't know. It's probably because my Instagram page is so outdated.
Right. Cool. Well, anything else you want to talk about before we close off?
I don't think so. But I do appreciate you taking the time to do this.
Yeah, I appreciate you doing it as well.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, Joel Harrison, thanks so much for talking to me. I'll talk to you later in the future.
John, thank you very much. Take care.
You too.